All right, Coach D. We're back. I still can't figure out. So when you came on initially, yours was perfect, but you thought you were looking at this from the side.
Well, I'm using
Now
I'm
you're like a little like you are you. Is this you on
because
your phone?
I changed my phone to straight up rather
Oh,
than
okay.
sideways. So I've been going back and forth whether going off the laptop or going off my phone. So I'm kind of going back and forth because I felt like on Tuesday I was like a little delayed with it.
Right.
For
I
how
thought,
for how fast he talked, I needed to talk even faster, which is amazing. I don't know if anybody could do that, but
right.
Coach definitely made it happen. That's for sure.
I
I got a great raccoon eyes going. You can tell we've been working camp all week, dude. My sunglasses,
yeah,
rock and roll, brother.
I just had
you're
the
not a sunglass guy. You're not
I
a
just had the
sunglass
gigantic buck, the gigantic what do you call a hat?
Yeah.
The kid said it looked like it had an egghead in the shadow. It looked like an egghead. So,
well, that's what happens when you're working with first and second graders. They're extremely honest.
Oh, it was fun though. It was a ton of fun. We have a great guest on today, Coach Lepore. Coaches at Manalapan. Really one of the storied programs of the Shore Conference. So he's taken over a program that's had a lot of success. He's had a lot of success. It's a big high school. Really big school, and he's a heck of a football coach. And I'm really curious to really talk to him about what it's like taking over a story program, continue to build on that program, and all those kind of things. So, without further ado, let's bring our great guest on here, Coach Lepore. How's everything going?
How we doing, man? Great to be here tonight. I'm so excited. Couldn't wait for this. When Coach D reached out to me last week, I was like, yes, let's do it. I was so excited for it. So I've watched it on Twitter. I've tuned in, and so I'm real excited. And obviously, Coach Schuman, you being a part of the Shore Conference, and at times, so it's great, man. I love it. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to have you on. You're at a great program, like I said, a storied program. Give everybody your background as a player, as a coach, and kind of how you got to become the head coach of Manalapan.
Yeah, I always tell people I was very fortunate because I grew up on Staten Island, went to Tauntonville High School. I graduated Tauntonville in 1989, and then I started coach. I knew in high school I wanted to teach and coach. I knew that at an early age. So I say I was fortunate. I went to Kane College, but I started coaching at Port Richmond High School in 1991. So going on like my 32nd year coaching high school football here. So it's pretty amazing. I've worked with some great guys. The first guy that hired me, who was like a second father to me, is Coach George. It's Joe George, who's now took over the job at Woodbridge High School. And, Coach George gave me a job in 1991. And in 1992, he took off and came out to Franklin, New Jersey. So I stayed at Port Richmond for 2 years. And then I went back to my alma mater, Tauntonville High School, and coached with Jimmy Munson. When Coach D and I were talking about Jimmy, in the past, we've talked about Jimmy. Jimmy's up at Wagner College now. Yep. I learned a lot of football under Jimmy. And then in 1997, I moved out here to Freehold, New Jersey, and I became an assistant coach, defensive coordinator at Freehold Township. And in 3 years, I took that program over at 27 years old. I was one of the youngest head coaches in the state. And I tell you, you think you're the guy or so much football until you're the guy.
Hell no, not till you wear that other hat, brother.
No
it's
doubt,
like
man.
Right to the teeth. Like,
I say now at 27 years old, I knew nothing. I knew nothing, but it was a great learning experience. I was there for 13 years total, and then obviously my relationship with Eddie Guerreri and Tom Galley, who were at Manalapan High School, and then when I left Freehold Township in 2009, I came to Manalapan in 2010. And then I actually left for 2 years and went with Mark Ciccatelli to Neptune. And in 2011, we won that state championship.
Yeah, not a bad guy to leave for.
No. One of my best friends. And then, the second year, 2012, we lost it to Nottingham at TCNJ. So we were actually in the state championship 2 years in a row. And then I came back to Manalapan in 13, and we went on some run, from 13 to 17. And, we were in the state championship. We won it in 14 every year. And, it's just, and then Eddie decided to step down in 2019 after the 2019 season. And I took over in 2020, which was that COVID year. It was a crazy year.
It's a hell of a year to take over, brother. A hell of a year to take over, man.
That was nuts. That was nuts. But I tell you what, you guys have coached a long time, and you coached in that year. I think there's better football.
Yeah, we were at RBR that year.
Yes, yes. And that was a wild year. That was a wild year.
That was the big. At Derek was saying that was the end for me at RBR. That was the end. So that COVID year, it was such a
it was crazy.
It was a crazy.
We played a game without practicing, bro. We played a game literally with a 7 a.m. walkthrough and a 12 o'clock kickoff. Come on down, Hackensack. Like, let's figure this out. And they played the best game of the year. So figure that one out.
Yeah.
That's when they realized they didn't need us anymore. They said,
"Oh, what are they doing? Like, next, okay."
Oh my God, that was just such a crazy year. And then and then the following year, 2021. And then, been there since. So it's been a ride, but I'm very fortunate. Again, working for some great head coaches, Coach George, Jimmy Munson, Mark Ciccatelli, Eddie Guerreri. So, had some great guys to work under.
Absolutely. You've had a ton of success as a coach. Talk about what it's like, and Tottenville, where you played, that's especially when you grew up there. That was a storied program. That was the program in Staten Island for a very long time. I remember, growing up in North Jersey, like I didn't know much about New York City football, but I knew about Tottenville, so talk about, working with some of those head coaches and how that kind of shaped you as becoming a head coach.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jimmy Munson, my high school coach and, who I coached for at Tottenville, Jimmy is like the ultimate X and O guy. He's the guy I learned, my work ethic and how to game plan at a young age. I was a defensive coordinator for him at 23, 24 years old. So, Jimmy taught me all the ins and outs. And those were the old days. And we always say, like, these young guys today you try to hire, these young guys have no clue. I can tell you this. No clue, Coach. No clue. I used
that could be a podcast. That could be 6 podcasts in itself. Like.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you stories, Jimmy. I mean, again, there was no such thing as huddle. Nope. I'll never forget Monday nights. I took a class over at Kane College. We would have practice on Monday. I would leave and go take class till like 9 o'clock. I would come back to the school and I would stay in the building, in the office till midnight. And that was on Monday nights. And, again, there was, we would stay Sunday till 7, 8, 9 o'clock, Mondays till midnight. That's the way we did it. And that was just that old school mentality. And that's what I learned from Jimmy, and then, again, working under Eddie Guerreri. Eddie kind of, as I said before, becoming a head coach at 27 years old, you think it, but you're certainly not ready, and there was so much learning curves in those 10 years as a head coach at Freehold Township. But then I would say, Eddie Guerreri really shaped my my coaching style, and just being under him for so many years and learning from Eddie was, kind of showed me the way of how it's supposed to be done,
And that's a huge thing. And me and Derek always talked about it. Like, I was lucky enough to work in North Jersey under DJ Nymphius and Brian Dunn, DJ Nymphius at Riverdale and Brian Dunn. And, working under those guys, like, just like when you work on you learn so much, you pick up so many different things, and you're 100% right about the assistants today that don't really know what it's like. I mean, a DJ, he would just be like, go order the food.
Yep. That's what we did, right?
Like, you're going to be here. Like, listen, this, I mean, you'll know this, but we used to they used to make us chart in the beginning with pencil and paper. Like, he used to have me chart in pencil paper. I'd be sitting there, my eyes would be glazed over.
Oh, my God.
I can't make it through. I mean, it's like,
that's what it was, though. That's part of it. That was part of the
minuses on your position too, right? You grade your position. I'd be there with the
No,
that was like part of, like, hey, that was like, hey, all right, if you want to get to where you want to get to, like, this is part of the process. Like, you got to start from the ground up and work up. You got to be the grunt, right? Like, you have to go through this process of learning and doing all of these things that suck. Like, this is the worst. Like, you think you're just going to come out here and, like, hey, man, I call plays or do something like that's not what it is, man.
I loved it, but it was like you had a love-hate relationship with it.
100%.
Like, I loved watching film. I loved looking at what my players were doing. But at the same time, like, you had to put it, you were required to stay there. So it wasn't like you finish your job. Okay, now you had to get with everybody else and see what they had. And that's when you're sitting there, and then you start to get glossy-eyed. It's like,
oh my God.
Are we arguing? We're arguing, whether we're going to line up over here in a 1 technique or a 3 technique.
Right. How are we going to block this? How are we going to block this exact thing? Are we going to wham? Are we going to? And we're talking about the same shit over and over in a circle. Nah, let me draw it up. No, I'll draw it up. Like, no,
and then
you're drawing up cards, right? Like now I got to do. Oh, hey, you got to do the cards for look. Okay, here we go. Now we're drawing up cards.
Oh my God.
But these guys today, like,
hours,
they really feel like because they played Madden, they can just come out here and call plays. And no offense to the young guys, I get it. It kind of, you're a product of what you grew up with and what you grew. And obviously, like, I know my coaches would probably all be in prison, but like, I still wouldn't like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't trade it for the world. Things evolve, things change, and if you don't adapt, like now you're on your own.
Hey, you know how many years I worked for free? Oh, it's amazing. Like these,
the
young kids today.
That thing. Like,
you ask if they want to coach.
Like, how much am I getting paid?
Exactly.
Like,
what's my stipend?
Paid? Like, paid? What are you talking about, dude? Like, if you're doing this, like, for the money, like, you think you're gonna gain something from this, dude?
Oh my God.
Buddy. Don't even try and work it down to see what you get per hour, because you'll really jump.
It's 5 cents, maybe
not
pennies.
Even. Yep, penny. I'm probably in the negative with tolls. So.
Talk about, and I think it'd be great to hear how talk about how it was and it really, like, when you first started, especially as a head coach, is at 27 years old, which is really, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I think
that's unbelievable.
I think when I was head coach at Saarbrück, I think I was 30. So I mean, 27. Like, I think that might have been my first or second year of coaching. Like, it was. That's incredible. Talk about, like, a lot of things that you learned from a young age, like the mistakes you made, the things you learned throughout that process.
I think at a young age, sometimes you're so full of piss and vinegar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's a great way to put it.
You want to conquer the world, and you're out there to prove, but sometimes you don't really stop and think. And sometimes the decision making that you make, you're not, you're thinking on instinct instead of. And again, that's what I learned the most from Eddie, and I'll tell you, one of my big flaws, I think, as a young coach, you got to have conviction, and I think sometimes we get caught up in, and as young coaches, we do this. And I've seen guys that have done this before. 1 year you're in one offense. The following year you're in the second offense. You keep on switching. 1 year you're in the stack defense. The following year you're in the 4-4. Then you're in the 5-2. And again, I think I made a lot of that, those mistakes when I was a young head coach, always looking for the answers. And the thing I learned from Eddie is conviction. Dom, just stick with it. You know what? If we're 3-4, we're 3-4. If we're going to run the ball and we're running power, we're running power. You got to evolve and things like that, of course, like anything else. But that was the thing I learned from Eddie, how he shaped my career, was conviction. Whereas a young coach, I made that mistake a lot, where you think change is good all the time.
Yeah, I think obviously establishing what you're good at is really, really important. And that is definitely the hardest thing as a young head coach. And on the flip side of it, you got to learn those things like firsthand. So when you became a head coach again, it became something you took all the stuff that you learned as an assistant, you took all the stuff that you learned as a young head coach and really, probably began to really shape you as a seasoned coach coming in, as a head coach again. And it's one of those things that, like, it's an experience that the guys who have been a head coach as a young person. It's an experience that is very unique because you're growing up with the kids that you're working with, even though you're older than them. You're still growing up with them because you're evolving your system. You're figuring out your coaching style, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what, I had an awesome situation. I coached my 2 younger brothers at Freehold Township. If you remember, So when I took over in 2000, we went 4-6, and it was the most wins we've had in like 15 years. And then my one brother was, as a junior, was a starting quarterback. My other brother
must have been fun.
Yeah, right. It was an outside linebacker. And then his senior year, my brother Paul, we go 7-3. We make the playoffs. It's the first time in Freehold Township history we make the playoffs in 30-something years. We go 7-3. So, I always say it was a pretty awesome experience to coach my two brothers, but, especially for my parents too.
That's cool. That's
awesome. That actually is so cool. Like you always hear about guys coaching their kids or whatever.
Right.
For you to coach your brothers,
my
one, shows you how young of a coach you were, right? To be able to do that. And then two, to be able to survive that. Nice job, man.
How about my parents?
Mom was pissed a couple times.
Parents must have loved it. Your parents must have.
Yeah, well, my dad, God rest his soul. He passed away 2 years ago. My dad was my biggest fan, and but I said they had to have thick skin because they had one son who was the head coach. The other son was the starting quarterback. So I said, thank God we had success because it made it a little bit easier.
That would have been brutal.
You have a couple of losing seasons there, and it's going to be bad in the stands.
No doubt about it. What was the transition like coming from Staten Island football to coming over a Shore Conference? What was that transition like?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, there's nothing like it. I know you guys were saying before, Coach, you were saying about city football and right now probably Staten Island football. Next to Erasmus Hall, who's doing a tremendous job. Phenomenal. Staten Island football is the best there is right now, but you can't even compare in terms of just the fans and the morale and that was the biggest thing. When I got to Freehold Township and playing those Friday nights, I mean, just recently Staten Island started playing Friday night games, but
which is actually crazy to think about, right? Because you think like city, you're thinking like, all right, lights everywhere, right? Like let's play on Friday nights, but it's just a different world.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous out there to play in the city.
Everybody inside, we're playing Saturday when the lights are on.
Yeah, exactly, Saturday afternoons. But yeah, that was the biggest thing, just the fanfare and. We've played some big games at Manalapan. There's a couple of thousand people there on Friday night, so that's pretty awesome.
You got a great setup there too in terms of field wise. Like there's a lot of it's nice, right? Like just the whole setup itself. A lot of facilities matter. Like I'm sorry, it is part of it. Like unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, I've come from a lot of programs that have had amazing facilities. You're talking Mount Olive, which is I can't even explain it. A West Orange situation, like these places, and that stuff matters. And I think that's something that a lot of guys overlook. But your setup is nice. The walk-in, the track, the stands itself. You gotta walk to get to the field.
Down that walk path. Yep.
Yes, the whole path. Like I just think it's really a nice, awesome setting on a Friday night.
Yeah, and our administration is tremendous. I mean, Sean Curry has now taken over as principal, and last couple of years, Sean is the former defensive coordinator for Coach Najar at Sayreville. He's a football guy, and then Beth English. People. Oh, the best. And Beth English is my athletic director, and I know Beth since she's a young teacher, young kid at Freehold Township. We were together, and she's doing a tremendous job. So. We got a great administration right now and a great parent organization. I always say it's second to none. Our football booster club and stuff like that, parents club, they're awesome. So
it's nice to hear the positivity coming from that when most times you hear, oh, this parent's this or this administrator is this. And look, we all know we've been around it. And we've been part of part of the negative process, but it starts at the top. And if those guys are up top, don't believe in the mission or the statement or, they're not all on board or they don't understand the game itself, like it's very difficult to have success. So you're very fortunate. Fortunate. I'm sure people would kill to have what you have.
Yeah, no, very fortunate. I'm very lucky. So it's a great support group.
The tradition there at Manalapan, like it's a place that people know about. It's a place that's had a really good history, obviously a lot of success. Talk about, I guess, the ground up. Like what does the ground up look like in Manalapan? Because I'm sure people are so curious. They have so much success. They've always churned out really good players. You've had really good teams. You have state championship teams. Yep. What is it like at the junior level all the way up to you guys?
Well, again, that's something, we take a lot of pride in it. And I always tell people, when I have the opportunity, very fortunate because coming from Freehold Township, when I was there, the Pop Warner splits between borough and township.
Right.
So it's hard to get some consistency there. And at Manalapan, we're very fortunate. We got the AYF right across the street. I got guys in that organization that their sons have played for me. So right now we got a great we got a great pipeline going on right now between us and the youth level. And, you know, I do a lot of camps with those guys. I do clinics with those coaches. So
you're very hands-on.
Yeah, it's very hands-on, coach. Very hands-on, and it's just a great situation right now. A lot of support,
and that's important, right? Because look, you're a big town. There's a lot of talent. So you know what? Like those privates are going to look right there.
Yeah, no,
and,
no doubt,
look,
no doubt.
You got, and if you're not. Look, if you're not having success, if you're not doing the right stuff, like those guys are going to look to go other places. And for the most part, Coach, I think you do a fantastic job of keeping your kids, like the ones that look. We know the ones that are going to want to go, and it's not even worth the thing, right? It's not even worth the prep. But I just think you do a great job of keeping your kids that, you know, are going to be Manalapan guys. I think it's something that's so underrated right now. It's something that I've been on both sides of it. You know, being up north in the Big North Conference with that, like you're just looking at guys taking people all over the place, right? And I just think you do a really good job of allowing those kids to see, hey man, you can come here and do the exact same thing as if you went elsewhere, and you could do it for free with your friends, with the school your dad went to, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's extremely, like, you just do a great job with that.
Coach, I appreciate that, man. I really do. I really do.
Because I know it's a hard gig. It's a hard gig.
It's really hard.
It's not easy. And it's something that within these, you know, recently it's the newest thing that we got to get done, right? It's the new thing that we got to handle or look at, because, you know, with that new transfer rule, guys are just looking to go.
No, absolutely.
You know, so.
Yeah, no, and I'll be honest with you. You know, in those middle years between, like, you know, 2011, 12 up to like 17, 18, you know, I think we got a little complacent. Eddie and I talked about it, and I used to tell Eddie, and then all of a sudden, you know, you start losing that kid, you know, that one or two kids. And I told Ed, I said, Ed, we really got to start to bridge this gap. So the year before
100%.
he left, you know, in 2019, we started with the camps. And then when I took over in 2020, that was the top of my priority list. I said, we have to bridge.
You got to be interactive, right? You got to be hands-on. You can't just, like, you know, shoot an email, hang a poster. No, you can't just show up to a game one time. Those guys need to know who you are, what you're all about, 100%. And not so much them, mommy and daddy. Like, mommy and daddy want to know, like, so what's this high school coach about? What do they run? What do we do? Right? Like, is it the same thing? I think that's hands-on is like the way to go.
No doubt. I spend as much time down at the AYF practices than I do my own practices in camp. You know, I'm there all August. I'll be there a couple of nights a week. You know, I'm with the guys. They text me, you know, during a week, you know, and, you know, again, I bring those guys in. We clinic, offense, defense, special teams, whatever they need. You know, it's got to be an open book, because you got to have that relationship with the guys. And like you said, the parents.
That's the key. That is the key. I think the Shore public schools do a great job of that. Maybe bet, you know, because coming from originally from North Jersey,
right?
I remember fighting all those battles.
Big North football,
I remember fighting all those battles, and you know, we would win some, we lose some. And if the kid left, we'd hope we get him back. Hopefully, he was starting, and we get him back, and you know, we could put him in a good situation. But from a situation that the Shore has done a really good job, I think, in the sense that with the AYF programs, with the coaches, and you do a particular good job, because I think, you know, as a person who's now an AYF coach with my own son, you know, that's a key part, like bridging the gap between, so they know who the high school coach is.
Coach, 100%.
They know what he does. They know that, you know, he's interested in the pro. I think that's such a big thing, and I think with social media, because it's so easy, like social media is very easy to post stuff. It's easy, you know, but it's really the hands-on. And I notice it because I still run, you know, run some camps and stuff. And I notice it, like, when you're around the kids for a few days here and a few days there, it's amazing the difference that it makes with those kids, because now they know who you are. And I think, you know, you doing that in Manalapan makes a gigantic difference, because, and that's what I think a lot of, not every program in the Shore, but a lot of the Shore programs do a better job of that, because I noticed that there's a lot more higher tier players at the public school than you would have.
100%.
In North Jersey, you have like you have the haves and have nots kind of thing.
Yeah.
And But down here, you have like even programs that aren't maybe a powerhouse will have some dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every team you play has a dude. Where
Absolutely.
if you're up north, that guy's not there, right? Like
Right.
he's at a DePaul, he's at a Bergen Catholic, he's at a Bosco, and you could say what you want about the privates down here, right? There's not as many.
There's not as many.
Your options are more limited. But if those guys want to go find something else, they're sure as hell going to go find something else.
Oh,
so
sure.
now it's a big thing. Like I say it all the time, like you have to recruit your roster. Whether it's a junior, a sophomore, a freshman, like if you like literally your high school roster, because these guys look at this transfer portal, it's like, oh wait, it's the same like college. We could just do this or do that. It's not like that, guys. Like you know what I mean? Like I think a lot more parents and kids need to be educated on the way the game is now and these rules that just come out where they hear like, oh, I can just go wherever I want. No, it's not like that, dude.
Yeah, no doubt. And Coach Schuman, you said it before about the kids knowing you. Like that was always my number one thing. I want those kids, by the time they're 5, 6, 7 years old, that's Coach Lepore. I want to go play for that guy someday, and that's always been my thing. Though I want those kids to know who I am, and I do those clinics during the winter. I do those couple of clinics now in the summer. And I'll tell you what, it's funny. I did like 3 Saturdays in June. And then the last Saturday, we have the bracelets, like Manalapan football bracelets. And I had about 100 of those made. And I hand them out to the kids. I mean, it was like friggin' Christmas, Those kids
They
so excited to put that
anything.
wristband on, but
I
mean, those are the things that we got to do.
They're not taking that
exactly. And that's what I told them. That thing don't come off.
No,
that don't come off. But those, that's what you got to do.
Kid, it's funny, and you recognize it, which is great. Like I saw this for the first time, and we do this now, like with the little kid camps that I run. But I saw this for the first time. I saw Brian Dunn do this when I'd been a coach for a long time.
Yeah.
With Nympheus at Riverdale, and then I was a head coach a couple of times. And then when I was back as an assistant with Coach Dunn, I worked his youth camp, and I won't say what he charged, but he charged it. He's an Ultrapan, so let's put it like that. He's able to charge a little more than everybody else.
You're going to show up with more kids.
But he did this thing. He did this thing that I do now, which I thought was just amazing. So he would have, at the end of camp, like the groups you're with, he'd be like, all right, give me 5 or 6 MVPs, I'm like, 5 or 6 MVPs? And we had 6
it's like MVP,
right?
player.
We would be going and we'd be having like 10, 15 MVP, he had like 100-person camp, 10, 15 MVPs.
Yeah.
Every 20 MVP, every camp. And he did these and he had like a little prize box and they could pick prize. And I just thought, I was like the light bulb went off. And I saw how those kids would look at, the young kids would look at it. And even, I'm telling you, even 11, 12-year-olds, you know what I mean?
Right.
They loved it. And I was like, if I ever am head coach again, and I'm doing that kind of, even now, I'm not a head coach, I'm running camp, and I still do it because the kids, their faces light up, and they all, and you know what, and that, obviously that means the parents go, and they love it, they enjoy it's kind of like, it's very simple and easy way to help the kids understand how important football is, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
You worked really hard.
Yeah.
Here's something
for your hard work.
And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's a little band. It doesn't matter if it's a T-shirt. It doesn't matter if it's a pat on the ass. Like they love it. Like anything that shows them like, hey man, I'm recognizing your hard work and I'm really and you're doing a great job. So here you go, bud.
Here you go. That's it. Be part of what we got going on here in Manalapan, and that's the most important thing.
I always say just drink the Kool-Aid.
Just drink the Kool-Aid. Drink the Kool-Aid.
I could be the Kool-Aid man. That's about the size I'm at now. God help us.
Talk about your development, like your program. Like what are you guys doing in the summer? What is it like for the kids to be a part of it now? What are they doing right now to get you guys ready for the season?
Right. Again. Things that I learned from Eddie over the years, my 13 years with Eddie. Again, the off-season program, I always felt like, that was his thing, hitting the weight room. We were always bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody else and teams that we were playing. So, we give everybody off that month of December, like most. We come back from Christmas, the holidays, New Year's, and then we're right back in the weight room. So we're in the weight room 3 days a week. And then, once the Meet of Champions is over, we can start throwing the ball around and, we start getting ready for 7-on-7s. And, we were at Monmouth a couple of weeks ago. We have the All Shore one on a Tuesday at the rec, at Manalapan Rec. And then we do one in the district. So those are the 3 7-on-7s we do. But right now, then I give them the week of 4th of July off. That's like one of our dead weeks that we got.
That's a good move. That's always a good move. I think
especially
when it falls on especially when the holiday falls in the middle of the week. It's
the middle of the week.
Just go do your thing. We'll be back hitting it hard. We got time.
Exactly. Yep. You know what, Coach? I just think it's one of those things where every sport has become 12 months out of the year now, which is kind of
insanity, right?
It's so different than when we grew up, where, we played in the season and then in the summer you were being a kid, now it's baseball, lacrosse, soccer, basketball. It's just so, everything is 12 months. So, that's another thing, like Coach, going back to what you were saying before about being a young head coach. At 27, I didn't want to know that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to share my kids. I was like, no, you got to be a football player. But as you grow up and you mature, it's like, it's a battle you can't fight. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be a little flexible that way. So we go 3 days a week now. We go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I stay away from the Mondays and Fridays just for that.
Smartest move ever. That's a seasoned coach who knows what the hell's going on, especially living down here at the shore. Fridays, no
doubt, Coach. No doubt that was the first thing one of the first things I changed, that I said, we got to stay away from the weekends, not just for the kids, and the parents, but for the coaches. We need
I need breathe too, man. I need a little bit of break too.
Right. We talked about it last week, right? You gotta go out with your girl and you gotta go to dinner and
100%. Happy wife, happy life, bro.
No
we
doubt.
ain't trying to kill it. They know what the season entails, but
Absolutely.
This is a little bit where you could, there's you're also, it's important. You are important. And then just show your players, ultimately, guys, there's more to life than football.
100%.
And at the end of the day, we're trying to produce great young men, right? We all want to have every player go on and play.
Absolutely.
Some of them don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So at least develop them as young men and kind of show them, look, man, this is the way to go. There are certain priorities. Yes, I want you to love football and be all about it, but also at the end of the day, this is life, and I want you to become good men too.
Yeah, no doubt, Coach. That's number one. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to, right? The winning is great, and you love winning the championships, but it's about developing those young men. That's the most important thing.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yep.
And then football's not the only thing that matters in this world.
Sorry, guys.
What conversation is this? Eric, am I supposed to start crying over here? You handing me tissues or something? What's going on?
The views on life have changed since I had a child.
Get sentimental on me over here.
We've talked about this. I got a 1-year-old. Things have changed. The viewpoint.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
If I look back and thought to myself, at 38 years old, that I would ever be saying that part of it, you just wouldn't have done it, right?
No doubt.
It's real, man. That's what it is. And now I've been in it. This is about to be my 15th season.
Yeah.
Now I have players that are it used to be, Coach, I'm at school, blah, blah, blah. And then now it's Coach, can you come to my wedding? And it's hey, Coach, I just had a kid. And it's holy shit. You had a kid. And then it's wait a minute, I have a kid. Oh boy. So that's the greatest part about coaching, right? Is
Coach, you hit it right on the
having
head.
those guys have that, Coach, thank you so much, that kind of thing. That's the best. That's why we do this. That's why we work for 5 cents an hour.
100%, Coach. 100%. And it's funny you said it, because if you were to ask any of my seniors that graduate, there's something I always tell. I say, just invite me to your wedding. That's what I want to be there.
That's all I want to know.
That's it.
Yep.
They all know that. Yep. Awesome.
I'm curious how you talked about it, so I'm curious about it. Because I see it at the youth level a lot. Literally all the seasons overlap in some way.
Yeah.
Kids who play football, they're playing some form of, if they're a baseball player, fall ball, and then let's say they're playing basketball in the winter or wrestling or whatever, and maybe they're doing some football work, and then in the spring, whatever sport they're doing there, but they're also doing some form of another sport.
Yeah.
Always doing something.
How do you I don't know. How do you coach your kids through that? Because that sharing part is definitely something that's become more and more prevalent, right? And football is always expected. I always think it's funny because the other sports don't want to share a football, but football is always expected to share. But that's why I prefaced the question with,
for years.
The football coach, he doesn't want to share. Oh, wait a minute. The football coach is always the one that is willing to share.
Absolutely.
But
I think we get the bad rap.
You talk about how how do you handle that? How do you kind of approach it with your players? How do you kind of coach them through that?
Well, again, Coach, I think it was one of those things, like I said before, I think it kind of comes with maturity, and that mindset. And the other thing is, the first thing I noticed when I came to Manalapan was that, the coaches were all on the same page, and work with a great bunch of guys. And, when we first got there, Rick Garrettson was the head basketball coach. Scotty Pressman was the head wrestling coach. Brian Boyce is the head baseball coach. And these are guys that have all had success. But we got great relationship, great friendship with each other. So it's like, hey, listen, our guy is going to play a little basketball during the summer, but he's going to come to practice in the morning. Or our guy's going to play a little baseball during the summer, but he'll be at your football practice. If you work together, it can happen. You know what I'm saying? But I think you got to have that open mind. You got to have that mindset. You got to be open-minded, and I think that just comes with maturity a little bit. But it really comes with the guys that you're working with. I got a great relationship with those guys.
Yeah, I think that's probably the first thing that maybe new head coaches should do when they get in a building is get to know the other coaches of the other sports, build some form of a relationship with them. You know what I mean? So you understand what they're looking to do, and then that way you can adapt. It's the football coach has to adapt, right? It's just
I'll tell you something.
Well, I think it's one of the things is that you have the most guys on your roster of any sport in the building, right? And football is always the most visible. And I'm sorry, it's nothing against those other sports, but football rules high schools. That's what it is.
Coach.
No, I was gonna say it's funny you say it because he's one of my close friends now, and I love him. But in the beginning when I was a young head coach, Brian Gollop, at Freehold Township basketball has had tremendous amount of success. They just put him in the Hall of Fame. But I can remember those years. He had some of those great teams back in the day. TJ LaFosse, who passed away, but Marcus Roberson and Eddie Fisher, Kevin Fisher. And I swear, and Brian may deny it, but, those guys are football players, and he told those guys, hey, you got to play basketball. I think one year I had TJ LaFosse out at safety. It lasted like 2 days during the summer. Next thing I know, the kid disappeared. I'm like, what happened to TJ? The guy said, I think Coach Gollop got to him and said, you're not playing football. You're playing basketball.
No way, buddy. You're a hooper, dude.
You're a hoop guy, But again, I think, like you said before, Coach, I think, if you had that relationship with those guys and it's that understanding, then it works. It works.
That's one of the things that I think, and at a big school, this is obviously like yours. You have a big high school.
Yeah. Recruit the hallways, baby.
One of the probably biggest in the shore, I would guess. But
and you guys are group 5, right? Big group 5.
Well, last year we were group 4, but we kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, we were right on the edge this year.
So
it used to be a big.
What do you have, 2,000 in the school?
Say it again, Coach.
How many in the school total?
Yeah, we're about 2,100, 2,200. Yeah, so we're right between group 4, group 5.
So I think back from when you started coaching, which you probably I think is interesting and a little bit different. Like in the early early 2000s and even going before that in the 90s, a lot of times you could actually, as a football coach, take the basketball coach or just put them right in your staff.
Yeah.
And that usually now they were with you a lot more, so you could kind of work schedules out easier.
Absolutely.
But that's much more difficult at a bigger high school, and the era is different where, and we talked about it briefly, like coaches are different, especially younger coaches. They want to kind of coach their sport, and they also want a little more of their freedom now. So it's not like not as many guys go from season to season, like they used to. So it's harder to just say, hey, come on my staff. You're lacrosse coach. It's not like people think that's what you do. It's not always a slam dunk. Sometimes you're able to do it. Yeah. Sometimes you're not. Talk about how you bring your young coaches along, because it is we laugh about it, but it's an important thing, because obviously they're critical for for your staff as you continue, to get older and older as a coach, even though you're in phenomenal shape. I wish I was in the shape that you're in.
Shit,
Okay.
like that's something too.
If anybody
man?
continues to look like he's 30 years old,
dude,
it's you.
like I don't know what the secret is. Maybe you're eating the grass off the field over there because it's great grass, by the way. Like it's a phenomenal field. But like, come on, man. Like when you do your Manalapan football calendar, like what month are you? Like, this is ridiculous.
My girlfriend keeps me in shape. She's a
shit, man. She's a
bikini model too. So she got
Coach ain't stupid. He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
That's that Staten Island.
That's right. That's right. The Staten Island game.
That's it.
She's a Staten Island girl too. She's a Staten Island girl as well.
There, man. Like there it is.
She's a Staten Island girl as well. So
shit, I ain't messing with her. She'll whoop somebody's ass.
Oh yeah, she's a black belt.
You don't mess with Staten Island girls.
Yeah, she's a black belt too. So she's pretty tough.
Coach, come on, man. You're just rolling down the list here. Like check. Like, I don't know, but that's awesome.
Talk about how you develop those guys. Talk a little bit about that.
And it's funny, Coach. You said it before about lessons learned as a young head coach, and I'll tell you, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I wanted to do it all. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to have control. And again, that's a mistake that I made as a young coach. But I can remember specifically, I think it was about 2006 or 7, and I had 3 young guys on my staff. A couple of names you might recognize: Mike Gator. Mike was a Hall of Fame kid at Manalapan, right? Great player. Mike Stoya, right? Mike Stoya is now the AD, right? Mike Stoya coached me. Mike Ferrando. Mike Ferrando's a North Jersey guy, and Mike's now a phys ed teacher. Those guys were fresh out of college, and Coach No Lie. And I just felt like, what can these guys do? What can they coach? Can they coordinate? They can't. So I did the offense, the defense, and the special teams, for about 2 years. And I tell you, it was a lot of work, but.
That took a couple of years off your life.
Yeah, it did take a couple of years off my life. But it was one of those things where, I just felt like I wasn't sure if they were ready. But again, I think that came with youth. And I think you got to trust your guys. You got to learn to trust a little bit. That's huge. And I think that comes with maturity. But, I think developing those guys, you want to see them work. You want to see their work ethic, and watch them grow and progress. But again, I just think it's you got to give guys responsibilities. You got to give them jobs to do, and you got to let go a little bit. That was one of the biggest things I learned. You got to let your guys go.
Hard.
Yeah. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall down. They're going to fall on their face. You live and learn. So,
I mean, shit. So do we as quote unquote seasoned coaches. We still mess up. We still do shit that, what are we doing? Like,
no doubt.
It's kind of part of it. If anything, it's like, a little bit of responsibility here. Okay, look, he can handle that position on his own. Okay, next step. Oh, look, he can handle that. Maybe that special teams, maybe one of them or something. Oh, he can be a box coach. Can he go up in the booth, right? Like there's so much to like with assistant coaches in, I mean, look, I always said, like, you got to coach your coaches, that's 100%. The most important thing because especially now these kids, like the kids see right through your bullshit. So if you got a coach that's just out there, rah, woo, woo, like, just to wear the polo, they're going home saying, coach doesn't do anything. Like anybody can give, like I can give anybody 10 minutes of individual and they can figure out what to do. Now, is it coordinated with what we are doing collectively? I think is one of the biggest parts. But I mean, I was always a firm believer in when you're with those young guys, a little bit of responsibility at a time, let them kind of earn their way into it. And then 100%. Eventually, like now they're drinking your Kool-Aid. Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's what you got to do. You got to give them a little freedom. They're going to make mistakes, but you got to you got to trust your coaches. You got to trust your coaches.
That's the, I think that's, for me, as and I think a lot of head coaches, the hardest thing is and maybe you could talk a little bit about it. You have a view of how you want things to go, right? And you kind of, and then you give it either maybe whether it's a coordinator or you're giving a role to a guy, and you kind of translate that to him, and then you're trusting him to do that. Talk about what your expectations are of those guys. Meaning, yes, they're going to make mistakes, right? But what is it that a young coach can do that earns your trust, that you're like, hey, even though you make mistakes here and there, you're on the right path? What is it that a young coach can do?
I think the most important thing is with me is loyalty, right? So loyalty, they got to be loyal to you. They got to be open-minded. One of the first things I learned as a young head coach, you got to be open-minded. Don't be so closed-minded. Communication to me is the most important thing too. You got to be able to communicate with your coaches. If your coaches could communicate. But again, I think it's one of those things where they got to show you, they got to prove to you that they can do it, that they could do it. The work ethic is important. Like I said before, one of the first things I learned from Jimmy Munson was work ethic, putting in the time. If you're walking off the practice field and you guys are walking into the office and that young assistant is walking to the parking lot and walking to his car,
yep.
I mean, that's not going to, that kid's not going to make it with us. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to fly. So I think work ethic.
Some of those guys, like if there's a guy that you think is pretty talented, but I do think that a lot of the younger coaches may not yet understand, because if we grew up a little more old school mentality, that was kind of, we grew up with 3-a-days for God's sake. Totally different type of game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Grab one of them and try to explain it to them, like, hey, listen, like, if you really are serious about, like, what do you do from that standpoint? How do you take a guy that you think could do something, but he just doesn't know, like he really doesn't get it.
He just doesn't
get it yet. Doesn't get it yet. I shouldn't say doesn't get it. Doesn't get it yet.
Yeah, and again, that was one of the things I said before about communication. I think I'm a pretty good communicator, so I'll always lay all that stuff out, to our guys. And if I got to sit a guy down one-on-one and say, hey, these are my expectations of you. This is what I expect from you. I think it's hard sometimes to take a guy, sometimes a young guy, and put him right up to the varsity. Maybe got to let him go coach the freshmen, let him be around the kids a little bit, let him learn. I think a guy's got to grow. He's got to grow in that. But, there's like that mold that you want him to be, and I think he's got to be open-minded. He's got to accept it. If he's not accepting to it, you get a good feel. That's another thing I always learned from Eddie. A good head coach, a head coach that has a good pulse of his team, right? So Eddie would always say, I know the pulse of my team. So
that's huge.
I'm always kind of that way. And again, took that from Eddie. Like I know the pulse of the team. If you trust me and you listen to what I'm telling you, I'm going to lead you in the right direction.
I think your very first statement too, like loyalty. The loyalty, it's being grounded where you're at, doing the job where you're at, not what the job you want, but doing the job that you're at and being great at it right now. And to me, like as a coach and having been a head coach and then been an assistant, after having been a head coach, just like you have, where, sometimes head coaches are hesitant to hire another head coach because they have their own ideas. But I always would tell guys, hey, listen, you're the head coach. I'm going to be your best asset because you're going to be I'm going to work really hard, but I'm also going to be a guy you can rely on and ask questions about things that you might not be able to talk to other guys about because I've been a head coach. You know what I mean? So, and I think that the things that, that loyalty, showing guys, head coaches that you're loyal to them.
Yes.
As long as you're going to be there, I recognize that not every assistant coach is going to be there for a million years anymore, which when you get them, it's gold, right?
It's gold. It's gold. Yeah, absolutely.
But when you're with me, you're loyal to what we're doing. You're loyal to the program. You're loyal to me as the head coach because I'm essentially the one that stamped you, right? So how do you this is a tough question. So I don't know that I know the answer. What are some of the things that you do to work to instill loyalty in the guy, especially newer coaches on the staff? What are some of the things that you like to do to really kind of get them to understand that we're a family and this is what we're trying to do together?
Well, I guess I just kind of try to be like a role model myself. You know what I'm saying? I walk that walk. So like, I'm not going to tell you one thing and then do something else,
Actions.
Actions, my actions, I want my actions to be louder than my words in terms of how I operate. I'm big with the ego thing. You can't have an ego. Like I've been a head coach. I've been an assistant coach. I've been a coordinator, listen, we all have a little ego. Yes. It's part of being a coach, but my ego isn't bigger than.
You have to have a little bit of an ego.
You got to have a little bit of an ego, but
I don't care what anybody says. If you don't have a little bit of if you don't have a little bit of this, like,
yeah,
I don't care how people take it one way or another.
It's got to be checked. It's got to be checked. Like I
Hell
know, I've been an assistant coach. I know I could be a great assistant coach. You know what I'm saying? Because my ego, I know how to check my ego. You know, because you have the head coach, and again, he's the head coach. But you know, I think it's one of those things where you got to lead as an example. For those younger guys. You know, I'm big with whatever happens in the room, it's got to stay in the room. Absolutely. Whatever's talked amongst the coaches.
Yep.
I'm not big on social media and putting our business on social media. That burns me.
That's why we're a family. This is what it is. We're talking.
It's just what it is.
Loyalty, like.
Yep. So I could, and again, I kind of can feel a guy out by the way we communicate on the staff. And if there's an issue, I'm going to say something. I put something in. We got group text amongst the coaches. If something gets out or leaks out, I'm like, hey, bud, it's got to stay here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so,
and we know we know where it came from, right? Because there's only so many of these. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bud. Like, what are we doing here? Like, let's talk about this.
Yeah. And I think the communication and the coaches meetings are very important. We'll have like 2 or 3 coaches meetings leading up to camp. And that's the top. Check the ego at the door. Like Coach said before, this is our family. What happens here, what happens in the room's got to stay in the room. Because again, I've had fathers on my staff that have, their sons in the program, and that's not an easy thing to do. My head freshman coach now, it's hard. My head freshman coach, his son is going to be a junior. I've had other guys on my staff that have sons. It's not easy. It's not easy.
No way.
No, I think you brought up a great point about how important everything is to keep everything in the room, and that guys, like literally check what you can have an ego, but you got to check what we're doing. Yeah. And ultimately, you're the head guy, right? So, it's like you don't have to always love every decision I make. Everybody, you could run the scenario like we've all done as assistant coach when we've been assistants. You could run the scenario. If I was head coach, I would have done X. Right. But you don't have to verbalize.
Put it in your binder, bro.
Put it in your binder, right?
When you're a head coach.
Yes.
And maybe you give listen, on Monday, when your coach and maybe a coaches before the coach meeting, you pull coach, the head coach aside and say, hey, I saw this. And that also shows the head coach that you're doing your research. You're paying attention to the game.
Absolutely.
I think that's an important thing. And you know what? And listen, and I'm curious your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Huddle gives so much at your fingertips now, right? Like it really, obviously almost too much, right? But it gives you so much at your fingertips. What do you expect guys to come prepared? Because I'm even when as a 2020 when I was at RBR, obviously the technology in Huddle has come so far that you could really do a lot of things. And
almost everything.
My mentality always is like, I'm going to do a lot of the stuff myself because I like to know what's going on, but I'd like to see what everybody else does. Right. So, what we used to check, we used to look and see, okay, which coaches watched any film.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
100%.
I pull it up every Monday. In our meeting. I look at all the players and who's watching film. Yep.
Right.
Yep. And even with coaches, it's like, hey, it's like, okay, you're watching a football game on Sunday, okay, because maybe you're not coming in as much as you used to, but you should be looking at film. And if you got 0 hours looked at, then, if you're given a suggestion in a meeting, you probably should keep your mouth shut because you have 0 hours film on. So, so one of the things that I think is great about Huddle is gives you really quick, easy access. Talk about what you like to have your guys kind of do for you with respect to golf. There's so many things they could do.
There is. And you know what, Coach? It used to be, 5-10 years ago, I used to have all the guys input the information. So whether you're on the offensive staff or the defensive staff, they would all split up the responsibilities, So if you were the defensive coordinator, and Derek and I are putting in like the down and distance and the hash and the stuff like that. So we're all watching film. And if you're the offensive coordinator, then we're putting in the, what coverage it is, what the front is. So we all got, we all got a piece of the pudding now. We're all involved. But now with Huddle Assist, now they're doing it. So again, it's one of those things, like you said before, you just got to trust your guys. And again, you can tell. And again, we're fortunate.
100%. You can tell
fortunate,
just by the questions that are asked or just the way they approach it. Like, Monday, like when I get back from that JV game and those guys are already on the board, it's like, hey, I'm coming in. And look, I've always been a firm believer. And I coached with Dave for 2 years. And, my role as an assistant coach is to think of everything possible that you haven't in terms of you got so many other things going on. Like, hey, coach, what about this? And my job is to just present it to you. And whether it works, great. If it doesn't and you say no, but I'm not pissed if you say no, or I'm not feeling some type of, well, coach doesn't want to run this because, dude, that's not what this is about, right?
No,
football's the ultimate team game where everybody has a job to do and you need to do that job to the best of your ability. And that's when
some guys do feel, but like my point is that some guys do.
Hell yeah. Some guys get pissed.
And there are guys that are great. I would say great coach. There are assistants that are very good coaches that sometimes get, I'd like to do more.
Well, they let their feelings get in the way.
I'm curious what coach has them do, because there's some guys that you assign things to and they'd like to do more. And then there are other guys that you might assign things to and maybe they're not. Well, not that they didn't do it. It's maybe they weren't, they didn't understand how to do it, right? They didn't understand exactly what. But that's why I'm curious what you do from that standpoint.
Yeah, so no, like we're I'm real specific with their jobs and stuff like that. So our 2 coordinators, we lost coach there.
Oh, he's here. He'll be.
There we go. There we go.
I kissed him off again. No, I'm kidding.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
I thought I was having a stroke.
Yeah. So again, with Huddle, like you were saying before, Coach, the meeting times obviously has changed, right? So we bring our guys in on Saturday after a Friday night game. We'll watch the game film with the kids, and then we'll lift, and we'll get the kids out of there, and then we'll stay as a staff probably till about noon, and then everybody goes home, and then we start watching film. And again, it's one of those things, as years have gone on, you got to expect that everybody has your film, right? So if you played 5 games, you have 5 games. If you played 10 games, you got 10 games, right? So don't ever think that no one has your film. Everybody has your film, right? Everybody's swapping and looking for an edge, right? So these guys go home on Saturday, and then the coordinators, they we have the Huddle Assist, so that goes out, that comes back. And then, guys just start watching film. But, we're communicating. We don't meet on Sundays. That was something a little different than what Eddie did. I've thought about coming back to the Sundays. I kind of play around with that a little bit. But again, it's like one of those things, like you said, with Huddle. You don't have to. As long as your guys are communicating with each other all day Sunday.
And that's you got to know your staff just like you got to know your team, right? If you
exactly.
Need to, if you see it and you're like, you know what, I think we need to all be in here on Sundays, then you got to make that call. But for the most part, especially hey, like you're the DB coach, like you should have a group chat with the linebacker coach, the D line coach, the DC, and the head coach, right? Offensive staff, you should have your own little gig or whatever. Like, I just feel like that shows initiative in terms of an assistant, wanting to be a part of that, right? Like, don't just show up on Monday and be like, well, what do they run? Like, I don't need to know that. Or don't tell me like what we did on Friday night. I've just watched 24 hours of that film and critiqued everything. So, I think it's just a lot of guys just don't really get it. Like, because I don't think they've ever, and this is the one thing that I've seen since, being in, North Jersey and now down here and whatnot with certain staff. Some guys playing in high school or that type of gig, they've never experienced it on that level, right? Like every program has been different. We were fortunate enough to play at high level high school programs that prepared us for college. And Dave has referenced it too.
Well, I played at a low level high school program.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm getting.
I was a good athlete. I got a scholarship.
But that's like what I'm saying, right?
Not that good.
And that's what I'm getting to, Dave, is that when you came out of small Group 1 Saddlebrook ball and all of a sudden you're at UConn, shell shock, right? Like, whoa, like I wasn't coached that way, it was here's the ball, go run, right? Yeah, I could tell, when I got to Sacred Heart, I was so far ahead of other freshmen because my coaches coached me a certain way.
Right, absolutely.
We watched film. We did all those particulars. And it wasn't just the head coach. It was the assistants, right? Like, that stuff mattered when I got to that next level. I was so far ahead of some of these guys. Like, I mean, it was crazy. Like, coverage-wise, these guys had no clue. They're like, what do you mean? What's cover 3? What's cover 4? I'm like, dude, you played high school football? Like, what are we talking about?
Listen, Derek, if I told you, I've told you, if I told you what I knew coming out of high school football, I knew, like, our plays were literally like pitch right to Dave. You know, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not kidding when I say this.
Wow.
So,
I know. That's why I brought
and
it
my played
up.
safety was basically don't let anybody get behind you.
Yeah.
Oh my
like,
God.
hey, just stand here.
That was what it was.
I mean, it happens, right?
I had a learning curve. I was like, like.
Well, I think you guys said it. No doubt.
They started drawing stuff up in college, and I was like, "What are they doing?" I didn't know what they were doing. I'm not kidding. I'm like, "What are they doing?" I never saw anyone draw, other than like we watch film. I never saw anyone draw an X and O in high school. Is that crazy?
That is crazy.
Everything was taught on the field, and I never saw anything on a board. On film, they would explain this, but I never saw. So they started drawing things. I came in there. I was like, I know I called my dad. I'm just going to be looking at this playbook for like hours because I am not in the same, level as far as knowledge wise.
Right.
So it's and obviously now that's the beauty, I guess, of now, even, I mean, if you're not doing that, all the stuff as a coach,
well, Coach, you said it
your team's going to be really bad.
Coach, you said it before. I mean, one of the things, I mean, obviously it was a terrible year and how it went down with 2020 with COVID, but that taught us, like Derek said before, about with Zoom, with Zoom meetings with your kids and stuff like that. I mean,
huge.
I mean, it's come so far now. I mean, our coordinators, our position coaches, as Coach said before, they're doing with our players, so that's going on all during the week, where, we didn't have that before 2020.
No, it's amazing. I want to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
What is it about Manalapan that really makes it such a special place? Because every year it's people want to cover it. They want to watch the games there. You guys get huge crowds for home games. What is it about Manalapan?
Coach, you know what? I think it has that blue collar mix. It's got a blue collar mix. It has it's made up of that North Jersey, I always say that North Jersey, that New York, that, just that mix of the just work ethic type of people, where it's the teachers, it's the cops, it's the firemen, it's the, it's the carpenters, it's the plumbers, it's, people that lunch pail type of environment. Again, we do have our, there are wealthier people in Manalapan, of course, but I mean, I think, majority is just that blue collar, type of attitude. And, and that's the biggest thing I find, it's just the kids really want to work at it, and they want to be successful. And, when you tell them we're going to do this, they're going to say, okay, let's do it.
You're not getting a million questions.
You're not getting a million questions. It's not why. It's like, all right, let's do it. I got to jump how high, and
yes, that's amazing.
So that's the biggest thing. But I would say it's that mix of that blue collar, mentality. That's the biggest. That's what I find. And the support from the community.
Absolutely. Although if the home prices keep going up in Monmouth County, we might only have rich people living here soon.
It'll be everywhere.
Yeah.
It'll be everywhere. But no, I think you nailed it on the head. And that obviously translates into kids that are tough kids and kids that want to play football. And have the mindset to play the game. Coach, it's been fantastic having you on.
Awesome.
I hope we didn't take too much of your Thursday night.
I'll do another hour if you want. I don't care. We'll shoot this. I don't care if you want. Yeah.
Listen, if I normally we do our show on Fridays.
Early.
Yeah.
Yes. So
we didn't even talk any scheme.
It doesn't interrupt dinner, but this week
we rarely get to X's and O's on this.
We didn't even talk any scheme. I'm ready to do some scheme if you want.
No, listen, we rarely get to
bring you on again for that. And we'll save that for after the season, though.
All right, there you go.
We don't, we now know that you run power really well, and we want to make we don't want to give away the nuances of your power game.
No, yeah. No, listen. Hey, it's another thing I learned from Coach Guerreri. There's no secrets.
No secrets.
No, absolutely not. Everybody knows everything.
Everybody knows everything. Listen. The minute your mindset changes and you think differently, you're better off. There's no secrets.
Yep.
There's no secrets.
Coach, appreciate it, man. Really, thank you for taking the time.
It's been great having you on, Coach.
Awesome.
Anytime you want to talk football,
let's do it.
We're glad to have you on. It's been
We're
great
all
talking to you.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you, man.
Have a great day, Coach.
Have a good weekend.
All
right,
bye.
man. Great. Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, that was fantastic. Really great show.
I didn't know he was a Staten Island guy. I love that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either. But I know this. He's in better shape than both of us. So,
listen. It don't take much. Like, no offense to him. I know he's in great shape, but it don't take much to look better than us. We talk about this shit enough. We should really just start doing something.
I'm so strong. I'm so strong, but I gotta slim down. So strong. I got some.
I tell myself that too.
Well, that was a great show. I'll let you go get some dinner, if you haven't already. And
we've had a hell of a week.
It's been a great week. Go enjoy. Where you're going.
Those kids were good. Those kids were great this week. They really worked hard, and through that heat, man, they're like, hey, just keep giving me water, Coach, and we're good to go.
No, they did. They did a great job. I don't know if you saw, because I think you're in the.
We also have like
a bunch of thank yous came in our
awesome.
In the snap.
That's good.
So.
And we found the smartest like little secret ever, like that we're gonna have as a GA for the next 25 years.
Oh my God! But yeah, that if I was
literally,
like
guys, I
found my
analytics guy. I found my analytics guy for the next like 30 years. We're good. We're set.
He was ready to go with all that stuff.
I got more. I have a whole playbook now, so we're good to go.
That's fantastic. All right, let's get off the show. Great show.
All right, man.